Excellent. Thank you, guys. So, in sitting in the front row and trying to digest all the expertise, I was struck by the fact that we're here really as a system of care that we're beginning to develop. And you all on the front lines are part of that. And in the States right now, there's a term called becoming trauma-informed. And we hope over the next couple of days that you guys leave here with that. And it could be around identification of trauma in your classroom. It could be engaging in some type of treatment in the classroom. And we know that as teachers you have a lot going on right now. But becoming part of that system of care is extremely important. And so whether we're talking about community in the law, whether we're talking about recruitment, accreditation, or certainly school security, you're part of that team and engaging those conversations, because it takes a village, yes, but as a child psychologist, I realize that you all as teachers may know actually the child better than even the parents, because parents travel, right? And in this international community, there's this large transient community which comes and goes. You also, as teachers, recognize changes in behavior, right? You know. And our push now is to push what we know as experts down into you, and for you to be able to manage these things, to be able to understand, to check in with children. And there's only so much of us to go around. There's a lot of you. And investing in your expertise, what you know now about your classroom, about your community, and adding to that the knowledge of the experts you're going to hear today and tomorrow. So we have about 20 minutes to engage your questions. And so I'd like to ask the audience, what do you want to know more about? What questions do you have? Right, so the question is, what questions to ask during the recruitment phase when you're doing reference checks. So when you call those reference checks, what good questions could you ask those individuals?
I can start off and certainly would welcome any other comments from other panelists. One of the things that struck me in reading professional articles on that question is a statement by, I think it was by Cheryl Shakeshaft. Are you familiar with her? She's a professor at Virginia Commonwealth University in the United States, and she has studied a large number of court cases, which seems to be about as empirical as anybody has been able to get on this question of what specific recruitment techniques are actually correlated with more effectively identifying potential staff members who you don't want on your staff. So it is based on case studies, and it's it leaves a lot of room for professional judgment, but that's okay. Ultimately that's what we're going to have to do anyway. Now, what she said was, you're going to see child abuse very, very seldom. So if you asked a question, have you ever noticed a case where this candidate has abused a child? Well, that's probably not the most effective way to start. But if you talk about the candidate and ask questions about, what kinds of rules do you have at your school for faculty? And so that gives you a little background of who you're talking to, the qualifications of the reference, which I think is very important here. Are you dealing with someone who has, and the school has placed a high priority on this, and they already have in place some of the codes of conduct that you'll be hearing about more if you're attending the workshops? Or is it not? Is this a kind of a beginner? But regardless of that, what you want to then talk about is when you set rules and when you have certain roles that teachers are expected to follow, have you ever found an incident where the candidate has pressed beyond that role, has sort of pressed the boundaries of what a teacher should be doing? You're not talking specifically about child abuse there, but you're talking about a mentality that again, this is a case where, okay, maybe whatever the example is isn't going to be about child abuse, but is that kind of teacher you want in your school in terms of getting best quality teachers? Probably not. So that's that multiplier effect I was talking about. I think another thing would be to just, I think there is value in asking open-ended questions about, can you tell me about how this teacher interacts with students? And hear what he says. And if it's mostly about what happens inside the classroom, fine. And then ask, and what about outside of the classroom? Is a teacher involved with students in that way? How does a teacher interact with students there? And then you begin to hear, oh, you know, what often would be phrased as very positive. And that's one of the most difficult things about this, is a lot of the literature stresses that teachers who are, well, often, you know, called the more predator type of abuser are very often evaluated as wonderful teachers. And I'll close in a second, but when I heard this comment say, well, yes, but ask more specifically about what do they do, and you know, where are they with students, and how often is it an activity where they're off on their own without another teacher or adult. And it reminded me of one case in Amsterdam where we ultimately found that the business manager was embezzling money. And I know this, it may sound like a stretch, but then with private investigators who advised us, said, you know, one of the true indicators of you may have a problem is the employee who always works late at night, you know, is this sort of model employee of always doing more, but in circumstances where he or she is essentially alone. So in my review of the literature, those would be the kinds of things, some of the things that if you got those kinds of answers without prompting too much, you know, I would say your level of confidence should go down. And, you know, in the ultimate comparison of the candidate to other candidates, that should be a factor.
Great. I think Veronica and Jane both have comments.
I think recruitment is a minefield. Anyone looking to recruit a teacher and feel that they have covered every possible angle, that they have got the teacher that's going to be the best teacher, the best communicator with children, and the person that you feel is the safest person to leave your child with, will find that actually all of that will need to be tested. Because there is no way that anyone who is intent on harming children is going to make that obvious to you. And I think, to be honest, it is about behavior, it is about assessing people's behavior, and you can ask as many questions as you like, but if somebody is intent on bypassing, they will. And I think that's a tricky one. The other part of that is actually you are educating the teachers to behave appropriately, and they have to learn that. And they're not necessarily looking to abuse or harm children, but they are looking to learn and find out how to be good educators and good communicators and work appropriately. But in the context of you having a structure within your schools which is about setting boundaries and providing language and providing safe environments, all of that is about how you set up your school. So I think it's difficult to say, give me the right questions to ask at an interview and feel comfortable that you've covered everything. And I think that's, you have to be, I mean, I'd say be cautious about that.
And Nancy, thanks for your question. You're not the only head of school to ask us for guidance and advice, specifically around the area of selection, interviewing, and references, writing references. This happened at AIE about a month ago. Another head stood up and said, we need legal guidance. One of the things that many people are worried about is when they do know things that seem odd, you know, what do you do with that? And many people are hesitant to do anything with it, and sometimes, especially in our world of international school recruitment, the easiest thing to do when we think there's a problem is non-renew the contract and let the person go somewhere else. We can't do that. We also have a moral obligation to society and an obligation to the law in general to report if we think, even if we suspect we need advice, and then if we know, we have to report to the law. One of the things that the task force is doing, the recruitment committee specifically, is we said we will go out, we will talk to people in law enforcement and experts and get guidance for heads who are asking for guidance around this area. And specifically, this last week, we actually published an article about the issue of negligent hiring or negligent referrals. How can you get in trouble for writing a referral that's too good? In other words, there were things that happened that someone did incorrectly that you had an obligation to report to someone who is hiring that person. You know, what happens if you write a bad referral and it's based on hearsay, and in fact you could be slandering someone? And the third category is, what about a neutral referral, where you really don't say anything at all and you probably should have? So these are the areas. It's not easy. We will work together collaboratively with experts to get more information out to people, to help you, Nancy, to help other heads who, like you, are asking us all these same questions.
Great, thank you. In the front.
Thank you. When we look at emergency plans, I'll tell you it's under reported or under planned area, and it's very rare that a school's emergency plans will have directions in there for reporting misbehavior to the staff or abuses on the parents. Some plans do have that, including all the way with social things, social events, and other items. But it's very rare in the emergency plans themselves. And it's almost just like you spoke before about the sending the referral. It appears to me from the emergency plans, a lot of schools have those type of policies, but they don't really promote them as they should and articulate them out to the community. So I think it's something that really the international school community could work on as a group. Does that answer your question? Mm-hmm. What needs to happen for the international community is they have to identify those things that they want the teacher to do, the educator, and then they want to identify those signs and symptoms, those early warning signs, and then have them for not only the educators but also the staff, because you're going to find out your security personnel see the children coming in every day, and they see the situations with the parents as they pick up and drop off. So there could be signs and indicators. And also when you sit down with the family during their initial conference to invite them into the school, you want to discuss some of your policies there and some of the reporting procedures that you're going to go through if you see some of these signs out there. So I think awareness with the community, for the educator, what to look for the family member, what's going to happen if something is observed, for the security guards, how to report it, because sometimes you'll find out some of the preparatory staff is afraid to report something because it may be a very predominant family member or something like that in the community, and they cherish their job. So the first thing I think is education. You have to identify those things and then ensure your community has a correct response and what's according. The next thing you can look at is talk with some of the local police departments in your area, some of the consulates and embassies, and ask them for some educational guidance. Maybe they can come in and train your staff and say, this is what we look for in signs of abuse. These are patterns. Maybe you can bring some other people in to get some other input in there to train your staff on. Does that give you a good start there? Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi. I've been overseas 43 years. And yes, John, I'm from California too. In California and the state of Washington, it's very clear. Child support laws are very clear to teachers. You see or you think or you suspect abuse, you report it to the law. Overseas international schools, we don't have a child support system. And I'm hearing a lot of in-service for teachers, and I think it's important to educate teachers and parents. But we have a lot of, we have a lot of administrators who are very afraid when teachers, and I have been in that role as a counselor, as a teacher, to go to an administrator, principal, and they are afraid, and they want to hide it under the rug. Specifically, we had domestic abuse, very harsh abuse, and our principal was very afraid. And I've seen this in other places that I've been. So I think we also have to educate the administrators. You report it, and if your teachers report it, you take action. I live by the mantra, in the best interest of children, and it really disappoints me that that as educators, administrators, international schools, we follow that the parallel is with the hospitals, doctors. You know, you hide it because you don't want to wreck somebody's professional life. Well, I say bullshit. Kids are more important. And I really hate it when they don't report it because they're afraid, oh, it's the ambassador's secretary that's abusing her children. Excuse me. But I think educators and administrators have to have in-service education as well.
Did you want a response to that? Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very important, and also establishing the organizations what their rules are, and they have to stick by the rules, no matter what the circumstances of the child are. And then they have to say, hey, no matter whether it's the ambassador's child or it's somebody else's child, the actions have to be the same. And then they'll have their procedures lined out in their emergency plans and say, hey, the first things we're going to do step A, we're going to do step B. But it's not only important for the educators to understand what those signs are, the administrators have to know there has to be a scaled response. Just like the child that steps on the chair, hey, don't step on the chair. The child's on the top of the chair, maybe we're going to grab them. So you have to have that scaled response to the abuse accordingly. So if this is being reported, we have to take these steps, we have to document it, and we have to move forward. So you're correct. There has to be education at all levels.
Veronica, you had a comment?
I think my comment really is to say to you that this area of education, which is, you're saying really, needs to start at the top. And I think it's a really strange time. We are, in a way, going back to a place that we really should have started. And to challenge, I guess, is what we're trying to do, the status quo, the situation that you are now in, by saying that actually there is a lot you do not know about child protection. There is a lot you still need to learn about prioritizing the child. And it's not going to be an easy process, but I have to assure you that we have started that process. And we are in the process of identifying who needs training, who needs to be targeted, and where that support, for that support and that work should come from. And we are, as a group of people here, trying to work out actually what the future is going to be about, because there is no way that we can carry on in the way that we have been. And there's a lot of work going on in the background, and there's a lot of work going to be done in the future to focus the training, I think, I hope, and I cross my fingers, that it will happen. And my colleague here, I can see, is raising her hand, so I'm going to let her answer that question. And she's trying to support me in this.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to interrupt you,
No way, go on.
Veronica. For those of you who are interested in the law, Veronica and I are doing the session together. But to make a comment about administrators, okay? Yes, they do need education, and I'm married to an administrator, and I know that administrators are just people.
Yes.
And people need support. And a lot of times they are all by themselves, and we look at them all by themselves, and all by themselves they're afraid to report because all by themselves they don't know what to do. And part of the thing that, you know, this Child Protection Handbook, the first thing every school should do is work with the law, because they are there to support you. They're not there to criticize you. And work with social welfare. They're there to support you. And I was in a school for 3 days, and the very first meeting in the very first morning, the superintendent said, it's against the law, you know, there's mandated reporting in this country. However, our policy says you do not report. Okay? You must report to me, but I decide whether or not we're going to report. Because basically we don't trust the legal people. So we will not publish this policy because it contravenes the law. Now, after 3 days of working with the school and finding all the support systems that they have in their community, Childline, ISPCAN, all of these non-government people, and then social welfare, and then police, at the end of those 3 days, the final meeting we had is, okay, we're going to follow the law and we're going to publish this. So I really think that when we're talking about administrators, if we just look at them as people and help them.
Thanks, Lois.
Doug,
Yeah,
do we have
we have
time for
time-
just a quick story about that?
Yeah, we have time for just the quick story, then
Okay.
we're gonna move on.
I just want to emphasize also again, because I received calls myself in dealing with some cases where the head did not know what to do, exactly what you just said, Lois. In fact, someone said that there was someone who was accused of abusing a student in the school, and the head actually asked if he had to do anything, because he was a nice guy and he had a family. So going back, as we're saying, education, training. Yep, support.
One more question.
My question actually had to do with what do we do in situations when we live in countries where the law, I mean, you were saying that we have a legal obligation to report. Many of us live in countries where what we consider child abuse is actually legal in that country. And I was wondering what as international schools and international school community, if we are creating our own policies to deal with things that are not illegal, but we as educators feel. Or for those gray lines.
No, I think that's absolutely right. Every country that I've worked in Africa has, almost all of them I think, has a Children Act. And if you look at the country laws, if you don't have them, you need to get them. And if you don't understand where to get them from, then you need to partner with local agencies. And most of them are working directly. There's lots and lots of NGOs working directly with the communities outside of your school. And it is about developing relationships beyond the school gate and building a community that you can then use that actually will support you and help you. So okay, there's more to say, which I can't say now, about the grey area. But I think really, to be honest, you need to develop a community support program, which is building a support for you when you need it.
Thanks, Veronica. Our time is up, but I want to thank Veronica, Jane, John, and Chris for coming this morning and beginning the conversation, really beginning the conversation around child protection. I want to invite all of you to find these experts during coffee throughout the day, and also to come back. We're having another one of these sessions tomorrow morning with a different set of expertise. So please come. Thanks for coming, and we'll enjoy interacting with you all throughout the next 2 days. Thank you.